Who are the players you should be targeting in DFS for the main slate of Week 18 on DraftKings and FanDuel? Who are the players on the injury reports and COVID-19 protocols that you need to know of for the games as well? It's time to find out right here, right now, as we close the week on Locked On Fantasy Football with Lineup Friday.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinny Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm running about NFL and fantasy football for SportingNews.com. It's finally here, the last week of the regular season, our last chance to play DFS with a full complement of teams. We just have 3 games away from the main slate. That would be the Chiefs, Broncos, and Cowboys, Eagles on Saturday, and then the Chiefs, Raiders on Sunday night. But otherwise, a packed group of games there and good targets all across the board. Quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and defenses. Teams to target as well for the best production here based on the matchups. We'll dive into that, give you our core players that you should look at here to put in your lineups, whether you're playing cash games or tournaments, whether you're playing DraftKings or FanDuel. We'll help you there and have the best success possible in our final full slate there. We'll still have a playoff defense. We know that all the way through Super Bowl 56. So a lot of fun stuff still to talk about here in upcoming weeks, including our Roundup Monday. We'll break down everything we saw, kind of push some teams into the offseason and still look at the teams in the playoffs in terms of what they can do in their upcoming games here. So a lot of fun stuff still going, and we'll keep it going all through the offseason here at Locked On Fantasy Football. Looking at free agency, the draft, all things that add up to our fantasy football success and hopefully better and more of it here in 2022. So a lot of good stuff to come. We will dive into the DFS targets here. No Thursday night football to break down this week. So all about DFS and then injury updates there at the end of the show in rapid fire fashion for you. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We're free and available for you on all platforms. Now, quarterbacks, let's dive into the players that we've pulled out and liked here on our list. And if you want to pay up for Josh Allen, this is a great week to do so. Again, I like to pay up in cash games because you know what you're going to get from a lot of these guys. I like a little bit more volatility and rolling the dice in tournaments there. And so you want to stock up on the players that you know are going to come through. And Josh Allen, look, if you played him against the Falcons last week, you were kind of hit by the snow a little bit, but he still came through with the rushing production, even though his passing was pretty dreadful. So it wasn't the best DFS performance for cash games from Allen. We expect him to have a very high floor. He had to fight to get that with his rushing production last week, but this week he gets the Jets at home, and the Bills need to win this game. They need to blow it out against the Jets with the Patriots right on their heels. They need to win the AFC East. They want to move up as well in the AFC playoff standings if possible. If Cincinnati is resting players, that gives them a opportunity there to get into number 3 at least here, and maybe the Chiefs will give them some help so they can slide up to 2. So a lot of things to look at here for the Bills, a lot of things to play for. Allen wants to end on a high note here, especially after Evans' slumping game. He tends to do that if he's pretty bad in the previous week. He comes back with a vengeance as a passer. And the matchups are all great here in this matchup against the Jets overall. So adds up really well for Stephon Diggs and Dawson Knox to have nice games here to help Allen really produce at its high level. And then the running's always going to be there. And we like the Bills' rushing attack quite a bit now. It's kind of taken over down the stretch as the weather's gotten adverse here. And looking at where the Bills are at with their defense playing better, it's a really revived their offense by taking away their pass-happy approach and trusting a little bit more in the running game, knowing that teams are really afraid of what Allen can do downfield in the passing game and what he can do as a freight train of a runner there supporting Devin Singletary. So good price points, 8,100 on DraftKings, 8,800 on FanDuel if you're going to pay up there. Kirk Cousins is our next guy we look at. We go to the 6,000, 7,000 range there on DraftKings and FanDuel. He's 6,100 at home against the Bears on DraftKings, 7,200 on FanDuel. Really like those prices. He's coming off the COVID-19 protocol. Sean Mannion had really dragged down this offense. The Vikings are out of the playoff race here, so are the Bears. So it's a pride type game here. So Kirk Cousins can get it done here. The Bears' secondary is pretty bad. We know that. The KJ Osborne, Justin Jefferson, the tight end, it really adds up nicely here for Kirk Cousins here. Week 18 coming back to finish strong here at home, and no worry about the weather. Controlled environment here inside in Minnesota. So that also helps us like him. Now, on the cheaper side of things, if you want to drop down to the 5,000, 6,000 range there on DraftKings and FanDuel, you can look at Andy Dalton. Justin Fields looks like he was going to be on track here to return with the ankle injury, but then he was put on the COVID-19 list. So he's practicing in full. Then on the list here, Andy Dalton is battling a growing injury, but he practiced in full too. So he's good to go. Probably going to get a second closing start here with Fields popping up there late. Thursday is a really tough turnaround there when you're on the list to test negative in time to play. So Andy Dalton should be presumed to be there. And if Cousins is going to put up big numbers, you figure Dalton can. These two teams were very disappointing when they played in Chicago on Monday night a few weeks ago. Just didn't produce a lot of offense. I think that changes here with controlled environment. And it's going to be a theme of what we look at. The Bears are a team that are very attractive this week against that Vikings defense, especially with Dalton and having that veteran-centering presence here for the passing game. Elsewhere at the 6,000, 7,000 level there is Taysom Hill, 6,200 on DraftKings, 7,700 on FanDuel. So more expensive than Cousins on DK. That makes Cousins a good value on DK, and he's more expensive than Cousins on FanDuel. And part of it we know is the running. That gives him a pretty nice floor here with his production, playing the Falcons, showing off a nice arm as well. They're making some plays downfield. It's all about, can he get a couple touchdowns here? And I think this game is going to be higher scoring than we think here between the Falcons and Saints. The first one was played in the 20s. This could have a little bit more pointage here. So Taysom Hill, you really like at that price point to go after right there with Kirk Cousins in the middle. Now, we talked about Andy Dalton. The player that we want to look at a little bit more here is Jordan Love. He's 5,500 on DraftKings, 6,700 on FanDuel. Now, Aaron Rodgers says he's going to start the game. I don't know why the Packers want to put him in there with a toe injury issue. Maybe it's starting the game means getting in the game and having a series or less than that before giving away to Jordan Love. But I do like the Lions to play well in this game. On the other side, you have Tim Boyle. I'm not sure about Jared Goff. He's had 2 limited practices with a knee injury. Could play. They could not take any chances. May want to see a little bit more of Boyle. The offense has actually done some things here in the past 2 weeks with Boyle, with Goff missing games with COVID-19 protocol and the knee injury. They want to go back to Goff, but I would say if there's any question mark about Goff, I just don't know if he's going to be in their future plans where it makes sense to look at Boyle a little bit more because he could hang around as a backup here for them or wherever they go at quarterback next year. So something to keep in mind that for evaluation purposes for the Lions, just seeing Boyle out there a little bit better. He's also going to be a bit motivated if he's out there because he's a former Packer, 4,900, 6,800. Now, I'm not going to pay up for Jared Goff here. There in this matchup, he's considerably more than Tim Boyle, but if you can get Boyle in there, it's a nice little cheat code there for how cheap he is still. And he's actually more than Dalton on FanDuel at 6,800. So he's $400 cheaper, however, than Dalton on DK. So that's why I really like Dalton this week at those price points. I mean, Boyle, we're not even sure starting, and Dalton didn't look like he was going to start, but now he's back to being a very good value with Fields set to miss the game. And Jordan Love should get regular snaps. He's playing the Lions. I think there's going to be some resistance from the Lions and putting up some points against maybe some Packers backup defenders as well. So whether it's Boyle or Goff in there, it's going to prompt Love to put up some digits here. And Devontae Adams may not play much, but you got other receivers, Alan Lazard, who can do damage here against the Lions. You figure Lazard will get some playing time in this game if they sit Adams, just so they can have an evaluation of Love with some of the regular receivers here. They can't go totally deep, and they're just not healthy enough to do that. Equanimeous St. Brown should see some extra play without Adams, but you look at Amon-Ra St. Brown on the other side makes a lot of sense there. The brothers get in some action here, and seeing Love and Boyle would also be the smarter play for both teams here in Week 18. So there is a look at your 6 quarterbacks to target across price points. There'll be Josh Allen, Kirk Cousins, Taysom Hill, Jordan Love, Andy Dalton, and if he starts, Tim Boyle. Now let's go to running back before we go to our next segment here. If you want to pay up at running back, this is a good week to do so. Jonathan Taylor versus Jaguars can absolutely destroy it here. So I think you could definitely get $3K return on this. 9,300 DraftKings, 10,200 on FanDuel. So pay up. It's going to cost you quite a bit, but Jonathan Taylor, the Colts are not going to mess around. They're going to feed Taylor quite a bit to dominate the Jaguars. The Jaguars' run defense has looked absolutely atrocious here in recent weeks. They cannot stop the Patriots from running at will with Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson. You might see a little Nyheim Hines, but Taylor can be the workhorse, get 25 to 30 carries in this one to bring them home a playoff berth. So love investing highly in Jonathan Taylor. Again, cash games more so than tournaments, but Taylor's just a universal guy. You put him in, you can get big numbers and big return there. It's just that you'll be a little bit hampered with the salaries there to really get some upside plays in tournament play. Now, if you want to pivot from that and still get some good value, you look at $1,000 cheaper on DraftKings is Alvin Kamara. He's $1,200 cheaper on FanDuel as well at $9,000. So Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram could be missing games. So Kamara should see a big load against the Falcons here. So Hill and Kamara should be quite busy here. So love that price point for Kamara if you don't want to pay up all the way for Taylor. Now, a little bit lower, we'll save quite a bit of money here, drop down around $1,500. Is David Montgomery in that matchup for the Bears against the Vikings. The Vikings' run defense has looked terrible. Also, they've broken down. They need help in linebacker. Their front is iffy here with Michael Pierce here hurting. So this should be really good for David Montgomery here. 6,800 on DraftKings, 7,600 on FanDuel. James Conner, he was the guy that was questionable and didn't play the last couple of weeks, but this week, Chase Edmonds is the one battling injuries. So an update there that we looked at Edmonds and Conner. We like if there's one back in his backfield, it might be going back to Conner. He might need to play here, even if he's limited. And then you could see some Benjamin in this game. But yeah, Edmonds, it doesn't look good. 2 missed practice for him, while Conner's a little closer, looks like, to returning. He could have maybe played last week. So yeah, if it bounces back to Conner here, 6,300 on DraftKings, 7,000 on FanDuel. He's almost a must-play against that Seahawks run defense. And that allows you to balance out playing Taylor or Kamara this week as well. There's a couple of other bargain guys you can look at to complement Taylor or Kamara. Devin Singletary is taking over this Bills backfield, 6,000 on DraftKings, 6,700 on FanDuel, So Connor Singletary, not bad either if you want to invest your money and go higher at other positions here as a combination. Now, if you really want to go and balance it out with Jonathan Taylor, so you're keeping your salary for running back rather nicer, you can look at Keyshawn Vaughn, because we've had 2 missed practices for Ronald Jones here with the ankle injury. Leonard Fournette is not going to play in the season finale against the Panthers. You also have Le'Veon Bell as your backup, and he's only a guy change of pace, can catch passes at this stage of his career. So you look at Keyshawn Vaughn, he could be very busy. He's practiced in full through his ribs injury. And keep in mind, we do have some good evidence of Keyshawn Vaughn navigating through the entire Panthers defense. He did it just a couple weeks ago in Carolina. So a lot of evidence. Also look at the wide receiver situation. Mike Evans should be back in full force here, practice in full there for the Bucks. But a lot of questions elsewhere without Antonio Brown, without Chris Godwin. The game script should also be positive. So they need to look at Vaughn because I think he might be their future back here versus Jones. And Fournette's a good showcase for the youngster there to get going. We really liked him last year, but was kind of thrown off by the Jones emergence and the Fournette being picked up there. But now he's an opportunity here to establish himself and say that he should have a key role in this backfield going forward, especially with Giovanni Bernard as a failed 1-year experiment on the shelf with the injury as well with Fournette and Jones. All right, we'll look at wide receiver and tight ends and defenses in our next segment here, but I do have to tell you more about Built Bar. It's a new year, so that means the New Year's resolutions. If you're getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, maybe even better than a candy bar. Built Bar makes it easier to stick to your resolution because it tastes so good you'll want to eat it, unlike other protein bars which can be chalky or waxy or taste like a chemical spill. Built Bars taste great. You want to eat healthy, but it just gets so boring. By like week 3 of this year, you might be thinking, this is just not worth it. Where's the chocolate? Well, Built Bars are going to help you find the chocolate because every bar you get from Built Bar covered in 100% chocolate. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, only 4 grams net carbs, but packed with protein, 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, nearly double that, 30 grams of sugar, way more than double that, and dozens of net carbs as well. Here's an idea for the new year. Go to all your secret treat stashes at home, in the pantry, at the office, in the car, wherever. Throw out all the sugary or calorie-filled treats and replace them with Built Bars. So when you're craving a snack or treat, you can reach for something that's healthy and tastes incredible. Even if you're not a huge fan of working out, you can at least eat something that tastes good and is good for you. That way, when you enjoy a delicious Built Bar, you can almost count it as a workout. There's so many flavors to choose from: coconut almond, peanut butter brownie, raspberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel, mint brownie, and many more. In fact, Built is always coming out with new flavors for their bars, so check out Built.com often to see what's new. And if you go to Built.com now and use the promo code LOCK15, you get 15% off. You order, use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. Hey, fantasy football fans, this is Vinny Iyer with an incredible app everyone who buys gas also needs to know about. Get Upside. My listeners are making up to 25 cents for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now. Use promo code TOUCHDOWN. You get a bonus 25 cents per gallon on your first fill up. That's up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app for free and use the promo code TOUCHDOWN to get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back in your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 to $300 a month in cash back, and there's no catch. The cash back gets added right to your account. You can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or even an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use the promo code TOUCHDOWN. Again, that's the promo code TOUCHDOWN to get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. Again, promo code TOUCHDOWN at Get Upside. All right, time to finish our look at the DFS targets here on DraftKings and FanDuel. Before we do that, once again, I got to thank you here for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We are free and available for you on all platforms. All right, wide receivers. Here are the core players we're looking at. Cooper Kupp, if you want to pay up for him, look, if you want to do a Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp thing and make it work with a lot of sleepers, you can do that this week. Go and blow it out here. So the 49ers secondary in shambles here. Jaquaski Tart, Jimmy Ward could be missing this game. You have K'Wan Williams hurting. They're already pretty depleted in the secondary. So, like Cooper Kupp a lot, 9,700 on DraftKings, 10,000 on FanDuel. Again, you bounce that out just like you would with Taylor with some cheaper upside plays, and there are a couple of those to look at this week for sure. A.J. Brown, you look at his value here, 7,000 on DraftKings, 7,400 on FanDuel. Very quiet last week, but they'll need him to go out this week, I think. And the Texans secondary cannot cover him. It's going to be much like the 49ers game for A.J. Brown. Gets a lot of targets, a lot of tune-up here with Ryan Tannehill. I like A.J. Brown a lot this week. The Texans, again, overmatched in the secondary by this player. So 7,000 on DraftKings, 7,400 on FanDuel. A lot of people are going to be on DK Metcalf trying to chase the game he had last week with the 3 touchdowns. And you have the week before, he also scored on a long play. But I really like Tyler Lockett. He's the Cardinals killer. Has done a lot of damage against them. So like the price compared to Metcalf, you save a little bit of money. 6,400 on DraftKings, 6,900 on FanDuel. Another player I love this week is Darnell Mooney, 5,900 DraftKings, 6,300 FanDuel. So Dalton and Montgomery, but let's add one more bear. These have been the principal bears here, and it's nice when you know that Mooney and Montgomery, the DM show here, is going to continue. These are the guys who have dominated, and Mooney's going to be a great pickup next year when Allen Robinson's officially gone. He's been very good this year as a wide receiver 2, pretty much. I think he has some wide receiver 1 upside here, especially if Justin Fields plays a little bit better and more regularly next year with his big arm. So Fields and Mooney, something we could be looking at in fantasy. But for now, look at Dalton and Mooney as a nice little stack opposite the Vikings in this game. Now, Chase Claypool, we like to on Sporting News. We mentioned him as a DFS target this week. It's Ben Roethlisberger's last game. They'll get Chase Claypool more involved. But that was before Deontay Johnson went into the COVID-19 protocol. So, yeah, unfortunately, like Justin Fields, Johnson was added to the list on Thursday. That makes it very tough to race the clock and get on the field there. So Too bad for Johnson. He's been one of the more consistent receivers all season long in fantasy. In reality, came through with a touchdown last week for Roethlisberger. So you might have to miss Roethlisberger's last game here. So that sets up Claypool to be busy. I think they need to get the ball to Claypool in shorter passes. He can make things happen after catch. He's got size, strength, speed, quickness. Not just make him a big play threat. I think whoever takes over quarterback from Big Ben next year, Claypool is going to be a big bounce back candidate overall. But he's been very quiet all year, but this is a good chance to get going as their number one and seeing some shorter to intermediate routes. I think that's something with Claypool. Too much relegated to being a deep or red zone threat. He can be used elsewhere on the field to be productive, and I think Roethlisberger has to tap into him with no Johnson. The Taysom Hill, Marquez Callaway chemistry is real. 5,000 and 5,900 are his prices respectively on DraftKings and FanDuel. Callaway, the last two games with Hill has been very productive. Really like him there in cash games, actually more so than tournaments. I know he's a big play target there, but looking at him, I think his usage is going to be consistent against the Falcons. Alan Lazard, we said the Packers will play some regulars. I think just out of necessity, if they're going to go 11 personnel and try to get Jordan Love some good reps here against the Lions, Lazard has to play. 4,000 only on DraftKings, 5,500 on FanDuel. Lazard really come on strong here because of Aaron Rodgers and the trust factor, but he can also help the young quarterback out here big time. And Cyril Grayson, again, if you want to bounce out Taylor, Kamara, Kupp, Cyril Grayson is going to be in a key role here going forward for the Bucks. 4,400 DraftKings, 5,600 FanDuel. He immediately replaced Antonio Brown. He immediately looked a little bit like Antonio Brown, at least the on-field version of him, making some catches, including the game winner there for 33 yards against the Jets last week. So the Panthers look like they'll be without Stephon Gilmore. C.J. Henderson also battling an injury. So that's going to help Grayson quite a bit get open. So good stuff all around at wide receiver to find some nice values that can go boom for you this week. At tight end, we have three suggestions. Dawson Knox is one, 5,400 on DraftKings, 6,000 on FanDuel. Great matchup. The Jets really struggle to cover the tight end. They gave up a big yardage game to Rob Gronkowski last week. So definitely Knox is in position to have his best game in several weeks here. A good threat to score as well for Josh Allen. So a little bit of a sneaky stack there, quarterback, tight end, Josh Allen, and Dawson Knox this week. I also like Hunter Henry. I wouldn't stack him with Mac Jones, but the Dolphins had a lot of trouble covering the tight end of late. Gave up 2 touchdowns to the position last week. So we dropped down to 4,000 from the $5,000 range on DraftKings. Hunter Henry is good. He's overdue to produce. We know just a couple weeks ago he had the 2-touchdown game against the Colts. And we know the Dolphins linebacker core and safeties are not that great at covering the position. So you can go there this week, and he's only 5,600 on FanDuel as well. Now, if we go to the bargain bin, our first recommendation was going to be C.J. Uzomah, but it looks really iffy for Uzomah to play. He's missed practice twice here for the Bengals. They can just pivot. It's a meaningless game. We know that for them. Just the seeding is out there, but they could rest. I mean, I know they have an outside shot number one, but if they're not taking chances with Joe Burrow, you figure they're not going to take chances with Uzomah here. So we're going to John Bates. Yep, the character sounding from Downton Abbey came through for Washington against the Cowboys, scoring a touchdown. He'll be more involved here, I think, going forward with Ricky Seals-Jones on the shelf here. So I really like John Bates. They got to throw to somebody right now with the Curtis Samuel hurting, no other wide receiver stepping up. It's pretty much McLaurin and Bates here for Taylor Heineke. And the matchup against the Giants is excellent this week for Bates to potentially see the end zone again. The three defenses that are targeting, one universal defense, one that looks good on DraftKings and FanDuel for the price point, are the Browns. Speaking of those backup Bengals playing there, it's Brandon Allen playing in Cleveland. The Browns kind of crushed the Bengals in the first meeting. Unfortunately for Cleveland, it doesn't matter much. They also have Case Keenum starting at quarterback, so the burden of winning in this game is on the defense. So 2,600 there on DraftKings, 4,500 FanDuel, the best all-round play defense that you can put in your lineups this week. Now, let's go to the ones that we can target specifically on the sites. Washington is the one I want to target on DK. Good value, not at the top. They're ranked first on FanDuel, 3,100. The Buccaneers, their same thing is they're a good price on FanDuel, not so great on DraftKings. At the top of the list, 4,200. So two defenses playing pretty weak offenses. Sam Darnold, Jake Fromm, targeting these players are very good. That's how you get the big fantasy points, and definitely those are the two teams that have the most appeal. Even with all the Buccaneers injuries, they have a lot of guys in the secondary who can make plays. They have a decent pass rush they will get after a weak Panthers offensive line. Same thing with the Giants. They're banged up front. Washington can get it done with pressure and get some turnovers there from Jake Fromm as well. So Browns, Washington Buccaneers, recommendations at defense, Knox, Henry, and Bates are your recommendation across price points at tight end. All right, we will close the show in rapid fire with our injury updates. Before we do that, BetOnline would like to wish you a very happy betting new year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains the #1 spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. Near year and a new updated desktop and mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON to get started. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC, right down to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. All right, time to close the show and our look at the 2021 regular season here. Week 18, the final injury update run here for you for a full slate of games. Let's lock and load, and hopefully you've got alternatives planned if you're playing still here fantasy football regular season, but these are players to also avoid in DFS with some question marks as well. So let's get right to it. Quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson, 2 missed practices here for Lamar Jackson. Tyler Huntley is good to go with his illness. So figure Lamar Jackson, they're not going to be taking any chances for further injury going into the offseason. The Ravens do have a playoff possibility, but Tyler Huntley's been pretty good here and should get the nod against the Steelers. So we'll watch that, but I would lean Huntley over Jackson at this point. Justin Fields, we mentioned for the Bears, had the ankle injury. That is not the issue. It's now the COVID-19 protocol. So Andy Dalton is most likely to start there, barring a quick clearance that may not happen for the Vikings. Now, Joe Burrow is not going to play. He has a knee issue. They're going to be careful with him. He's their franchise. He's the guy that can help them win the playoffs. He's not going to play, so Brandon Allen is going to make the start. In the same game, Baker Mayfield has been put on injured reserve for the final game with his left shoulder injury with not much meaning to it. Is it the last game in Cleveland Baker's played? We will see. Case Keenum is starting again for him in this matchup against Cincinnati there. So battle of backup quarterbacks there in the Battle of Ohio. Drew Lock is good to go with a shoulder injury. Doesn't mean much. Doesn't make us want to flock to the Broncos offense other than Noah Fant and the running backs this week. So, again, he's good to go for the Saturday game. Jared Goff, we'll see about him. 2 limited practices for Goff. Again, pivot to Boyle is a good DFS value if Goff doesn't play. Too expensive. However, Goff is priced up there in that main slate. In the same game, Aaron Rodgers, toe injury again. We'll see if he actually plays meaningful snaps. Let's hope he doesn't start if you were looking at Jordan Love as a DFS guy, because if he starts and it cuts into the time and it's just messy there. But I would not risk Rodgers beyond 1 series if I'm the Packers, and hopefully the Lions can put up some points there against maybe some backup Packers defenders so we can get some numbers from Love in the passing game as well. Taysom Hill going to go against the Falcons with that right finger injury. Mike Glennon doesn't affect fantasy too much, but he's not going to play for the Giants with his left wrist injury. Jake Fromm is going to start against Washington. So another reason to like the Washington football team defense this week. Jalen Hurts, we'll see. The Eagles are on the fence about resting players. Maybe he gets in a series just for getting his feet wet, warmed up a little bit before the playoffs. But Gardner Minshew could definitely start there for Hurts. Ben Roethlisberger, it's his final game of his career, barring a miracle where the Colts lose and the Colts allow the Steelers to get in the playoffs. Pectoral right shoulder injury. He'll play through those in his career finale and season finale here against Baltimore. Jimmy Garoppolo, they said they're going to start him if he can go. 2 limited practices with the right thumb. I think he's truly can be a game-time decision. They can pivot to Trey Lance once again after his great performance against the Texans, against the Rams this week. Let's turn to running back James Conner. We talked about him. Heel injury, 2 limited practices. Well, Chase Edmonds' ribs injury and a painful toe injury didn't practice again. So this could flip the backfield once again. We've seen the split, but Edmonds has carried the load the last couple of weeks with Conner on the shelf. This week, Conner might be the guy instead. So it's got a toggle kind of back and forth between these guys, hasn't it? And when it's one back, the Cardinals back is way more appealing than when these guys are splitting, because then you're yardage and catch dependent on Edmonds, and then you're touchdown dependent on Connor. So if one guy gets all of it, then it's really helpful to look at in DFS in regular season. Bengals, Joe Mixon on the COVID-19 list. So that's why we're kind of limited with our DFS targets here this week. We'll see if Mixon gets cleared to play, but Samaje Perine would start and have some appeal there against the Browns just by volume based there. Now, Nick Chubb should play through his chest and ribs injury against the Bengals. Kareem Hunt was not all that effective last week against the Steelers, but he should play through his ankle injury. But Chubb should get the majority of touches here. Maybe you'll see a little bit more of Dearness Johnson as well in this game. Ezekiel Elliott's good to go with his knee injury. We'll see how much he actually plays for the Cowboys against the Eagles. They said they're not resting, but it could be some gamesmanship there because the Eagles are planning to do that on the other side, and they could rematch on this game. So that's something to be thinking about here as the Cowboys and Eagles try to play it close to the vest here, because this is the second of 3 meetings they might have here this season. Tony Pollard here is a limited participant all week here, but he should play as a questionable tag there on Saturday night against the Eagles. Melvin Gordon, speaking of Saturday, thumb and hip injury, Javonte Williams' knee, both are going to be up for the Broncos to play the Chiefs. Aaron Jones battling a knee injury. I think they'll be careful with him. Maybe you'll see a little bit of Jones, maybe a little A.J. Dillon starting, and then maybe turn it over to Patrick Taylor there to put up all the numbers against the Lions. Run defense, we'll watch that. Reichel Armstead back with the Jaguars, went full again. He's fine for the Colts to complement Dare Ogunbowale in that game. Clyde Edwards-Helaire will not be playing for the Chiefs on Saturday against the Broncos, so a lot more of Darrell Williams to go off here with a little bit of Derek Gore in that matchup. Figures going to be a positive game script with Patrick Mahomes opposite Drew Lock. Josh Jacobs is going to play through his ribs injury in a great matchup against the Chargers. Cam Akers is going to return with his Achilles injury, 2 full practices here, but they'll be careful. It'll still be Sonny Michel being the workhorse, but they'll get some warm-up touches there for Akers ahead of the playoffs, where we know the Rams are going to play the first week with the Packers being the number 1 seed. Philip Lindsay is fine, and we'll keep playing against the Patriots. Duke Johnson Jr., a deep sleeper there in that game. Mark Ingram downgraded to no practice from limited there, so could miss the Falcons again. Another reason we like Alvin Kamara to dominate touches in a good matchup. Damian Harris should play through the hamstring again against the Dolphins. They might be a little bit careful because they already have a wild card, but they're also playing for the division at the same time the Bills are against the Jets. Saquon Barkley, limited practices, but he will play that ankle injury one last time against Washington. Michael Carter surprised us a little bit. We didn't think it looked pretty good because he didn't practice there on Wednesday, but he went full on Thursday, so pretty good chance to start unless there's a setback here for Michael Carter. I still don't love the matchup against the Bills this week. The Eagles are going through a little bit of mess on Saturday. We'll have more information about this, but Miles Sanders certainly not going to play with his hand injury. Jordan Howard and Boston Scott have been the COVID-19 list, so it could pivot to Kenneth Gainwell regardless here in this game because he's the young stir, and again, they want to be careful with some of their key players. And Sanders, you knew wasn't going to play, but Howard and Scott maybe on the shelf, and that would give Gainwell a pretty good sized role here in that almost a must play in that matchup, where the Cowboys figured to rest defensive players. We know one defensive player out in the game is going to be Micah Parsons. He's on the COVID-19 list. So that really helps everything in the Eagles offense, not worrying about his pass rush and run stopping there in the middle of the field and on the outside for Dallas. Elijah Mitchell, they're going to play through his knee injury, I think. Didn't practice on Wednesday, did get a limited session there. So he should be fine and handle the normal workload, which is a feature workload against the Rams. Rashad Penny, growing injury, he's fine. So is DJ Dallas with quad injury. They will be the backs against the Cardinals, but Penny should see high volume again after the big game against the Lions. Ronald Jones, 2 missed practices. Keyshawn Vaughn, ribs, he's got 2 full practices. Vaughn looks like he will be the starter in this backfield here against the Panthers in a very positive game script. Antonio Gibson, 2 limited practices with his hip injury. Not 100% sure he's going to play against the Giants. Could be a little bit more of Jared Patterson in a super sub role. We will monitor that on game day. Let's start a wide receiver, Rondell Moore. We'll see if he can return. 2 limited practices here. Missed the past 2 games, but nothing to see there in fantasy. Doesn't look good for Marquise Hollywood Brown. We don't like the midweek injury pop-ups, but didn't practice with an ankle injury and may not play against the Steelers. It's not like he was doing much in fantasy of late anyway at this point, so it could be a little bit more run for Mark Andrews and Bateman in that game. Emmanuel Sanders didn't practice. He's probably not going to play against the Jets here. They don't need to risk him when you have Gabriel Davis, Isaiah McKenzie as good replacement receivers, and he can get it done with Diggs and Knox as heavy favorites this week. Robbie Anderson probably going to miss the final game for the Panthers as a free agent next year. Sam Darnold's probably not going to be back, so Anderson probably going to be replaced by Terrace Marshall, but 2 missed practices with a quad injury. Chris Conley, 2 missed practices with a knee injury for the Texans, probably out for that game against the Titans, so maybe a little bit more run for Nico Collins playing off Brandon Cooks. Michael Pittman Jr., ribs injury, going to play through that 2 full practices. A good matchup against the Jaguars. Will he see the ball enough from Carson Wentz? That's going to be in question with Jonathan Taylor absolutely about to crush it in the ground game there in his march toward maybe getting 2,000 yards there from scrimmage. And well beyond that, Preston Williams, illness, going to play against the Patriots for the Dolphins. He's not in much of a big role, however, so keep that in mind. Jacoby Myers on the other side has been kind of more limited here with his role. He did get more active, but thigh injury should play for them. Nelson Aguilar could also return from his concussion here, but right now, Christian Wilkinson and Kendrick Bourne look like the receivers to trust most in that matchup against the Dolphins. If you need one, I would avoid it. If you can, Traquan Smith, chest injury, 2 limited practices. We'll see if he can go against the Falcons, but Marcus Callaway is still the one I like there, even with A.J. Terrell looming on the other side. Kadarius Toney was downgraded with a shoulder injury. Been an injury-riddled rookie season for him. It's done. Darius Slayton, shoulder injury. Colin Johnson, hamstring. John Ross, knee injury. We know they already shut down Sterling Shepard, so he'll be busy for Kenny Golladay in this matchup against Washington. Jamison Crowder, calf injury, limited twice, could return against the Bills. That's good because Braxton Berrios definitely could miss the game with his quad injury, so maybe a little flip there, just like we had with Connor Edmonds happening with Crowder and Berrios. Quez Watkins is going to start there for the Eagles in their 3 receiver sets with Devonta Smith and Jalen Reagor. We'll see how much they play Smith or Reagor, and other guys that they would trust on the front lines. But Watkins figures going to see regular snaps. We talked about Chase Claypool being a good value because Deontay Johnson added to the COVID-19 list on Thursday. So tough break for Deontay. That's why we don't play fantasy football season long to week 18. Things like this can develop, but even for guys consistently productive as Johnson was during the regular fantasy football season. DK Metcalf here with a foot injury will play through it against the Cardinals. He's red hot right now. Freddie Swain also going to play in that game as the 3rd receiver with his ankle injury. Mike Evans, good to see him get a full practice in to feel better about his chances for regular snaps against the Panthers. He's good to go. Julio Jones, same thing with the hamstring. We'll see. You could always tweak it, and things could be tough here. So not going to recommend him. I think it's good to have him out there to draw some attention to the defense to help A.J. Brown for sure. Curtis Samuel, set to miss the game with the hamstring injury. Just hasn't been a very good first season for him at all in Washington. Kyle Pitts also dealing with a hamstring issue, but he got a limited practice. That's a great sign that he's going to be out there for the Falcons against the Saints and trying to help them pull the upset, keep the Saints out of the playoffs. CJ Uzomah, talked about him. That's why he pivoted to John Bates of Washington. Knee and hip injuries, didn't practice, and is not sure he's going to play against the Browns. Austin Hooper, good to go with his hand injury against the Bengals. David Njoku, however, looks like he's going to miss the game. So a lot of Austin Hooper and Harrison Bryant there. You figure it's going to happen in that game against Cincinnati. Now, Noah Fant, we talked about him with the Drew Lock. He does have good chemistry there, and the tight end has been a trouble spot for the Chiefs in coverage. So really like Noah Fant this week. Molly Cox should play through his knee injury. So should Jack Doyle. So that committee is there. Low upside there against the Jaguars. Speaking of the Jaguars, James O'Shaughnessy doesn't look like he's going to return from his hip injury. Darren Waller looks like he could push this to being a game-time decision Sunday. That's really tough, but that's good for DFS because if you're playing that game, you can pivot and change your lineups really late there with Darren Waller and try to take advantage of him. But Chargers are terrible against the tight end and coverage. We know that. Foster Moreau is on standby with abdomen, but you really want Waller back in there. Raiders want him in reality. You want him in fantasy as well for this final week. Kyle Rudolph with an ankle injury is fine. He's going to play and back up Evan Ingram for the Giants. Dallas Goedert, we'll see if he gets cleared from the COVID-19 protocols. Yeah, they might be careful with him as well, being a key part of their offense. Ahead of the Cowboys game, Will Dissly going to miss a game for the Seahawks. A little bit more run for Gerald Everett there to miss practice with a heel injury. And Ricky Seals-Jones, we talked about John Bates being good value. Concussion for Ricky Seals-Jones after a scary injury with the neck and head and all that last week. Kickers, Evan McPherson should go. He has a growing injury for the Bengals. They just want him healed up for the playoffs. And Nick Folk has battled a left knee injury all season long, but he's kicked really well and scored a lot of fantasy points this season. So he's good to go for the game there against the Dolphins. So there you have. There's all the key injuries. We mentioned Micah Parsons as well. That's a big blow if you're playing IDP leagues as well. So that's the biggest defensive name that's been out all year. So something to keep in mind there in week 18. But again, yeah, this is why we don't play so deep, especially when you have COVID and injury attrition and all that adds up and makes things quite a mess. And some teams are intact. You know what they're playing for, and that really helps here. Trust those teams as much as possible. Avoid the teams that could be resting players, be judicious of players' usage there, or just be conservative here in week 18. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Our next episode will be the wrap-up show for this season, and we will do kind of a roundup Monday that also is kind of a roundup for the 2021 season there. We'll look at the non-playoff teams one way and the playoff teams the other way there in the NFL from a fantasy football perspective. Now, make your second listen Locked On Bets your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q with expert analysis and insight from lead starting. It's free and available on all platforms. For Locked On Fantasy Football, for your Lineup Friday show, this has been Vinny Iyer. Good luck in all your matchups this week, whether you're playing season-long still or DFS, and we'll see you on the flip side to break it all down and do a little post-mortem and also look to the future here on Locked On Fantasy Football.